All right, awesome. Mr. Orange, once again, thank you for your time. Uh, if you can just provide some context for me, uh, you know, why now as mayor? What, of course, you did send your platform, but as far as the timing, you've been out of the council for some time. You're still working in DC government. Just provide some context around your decision to jump into the race.
Uh, because I think the District of Columbia is in a critical moment. And I don't believe that the candidates that have presented themselves for the office are in a position to really stand up for the 700,000 residents and provide what is needed at this point in time. When I look at my background and the delivery that I've made thus far and compare that to the delivery of the other candidates, I think that I am light years ahead. So me coming to the race is a continuation of delivery, not I'm going to deliver it. It's a continuation on building on a foundation that I've had the opportunity to put in place. For example, I'm credited with jump-starting economic development with Home Depot, Giant, Costco, Lowe's, and all the other retail outlets that came along that now have caused development across the city. For school modernization, I'm the one that championed the reopening of McKinney Technology High School, followed up with Noyes Elementary School, and then the city followed with recreation centers, Turkey Thicket, North Michigan Park, Brentwood Community Centers. Then the city followed. So for the most part, the city in a way has been following my lead on a number of projects. When I saw that our kids did not have books for their core subjects and complained about this in the month of May, and they were from our better schools. These were children from Banneker and School Without Walls. So if they're feeling the pressures, you know what the other pressures are going to be, east of the river. So it took me, 2 years to get that legislation passed, the mandate that our children have books for their core subjects. So I've been in this space for a while. The minimum wage, I got it up to $15, but I had the foresight to put that trigger in there because I didn't want to have to go back to the council and debate whether or not there should be an increase. Now it's an automatic increase. So it went from $15 to $17.50 to $17.95, and this July will be $18.40. DC emancipation. It's been going on now for 21 years, but I am the one that authored the legislation to create the public holiday, but I knew I couldn't get the public holiday right away. So I started in the year 2000 and made it a private legal holiday first and kind of got the city, it took me 5 years to get the city ready for the public holiday. Now, when I introduced it for the private holiday, I was able to get Carol Swartz to co-introduce it with me because I wanted bipartisan support. After 5 years, I tried to get her to go along with me for the public holiday, and she's like, "You're going too far."
Yeah.
So I went by myself. But so these are things that I bring to the table. When Marion Barry was alive, during his time, I was able to get legislation passed to mandate that we have at least 10,000 Marion Barry summer youth employment spots. And then I changed the law to open it up to 22, 23, and 24-year-olds. And so it's just a continuation of providing, what I believe is needed, what the citizens believe what is needed, and the things that I've been able to accomplish. It's been accomplished with the community. When we started out with economic development,
Right.
Pat McGuire at Trinity College, I went to her. She said, "Yeah, you can use our community room. I'm not going to charge you." And then I started holding those economic development summits for 8 consecutive years. Mayor Williams, the deputy mayor for economic development, they would all come there. And then when the other wards woke up, but by that time I changed the face of Ward 5, and Jim Graham says, "Hey man, come help me out in Ward 1." So we went over there, and that's how we got Target and things on 14th Street. So I've always been able to take the lead. And then also, let me just say this,
No
this
problem.
one last
Yes, sir.
one thing. It's like Al Sharpton and Dick Gregory and them used to always say, I don't want to be with anybody that have never gotten themselves out of something. And so with me, when I came in 1999, we were in something. We were in junk bond status. We were $518 million deficit. The control board took all the powers away from our mayor. In that 8-year run, we established a program called the Economic Resurgence of Washington, D.C., 40 action items. We executed those items, and we went from junk bond status to AAA bond status, from a mayor having no powers to all the powers fully restored. From balancing our budget for 4 consecutive years, now the control board is gone. While the rest of the country was suffering through a recession because we're in the DMV and the feds were here and everybody had federal jobs, we were able to invest in real estate. And that brings us to where we are today. And I think now we're at a critical moment where that plan has been executed. What's the next plan for going forward?
I appreciate all of that. I wanted, because at the recent forum at MLK Library, you were critical of of the council members, the former council member and the current council member who were sitting among you, your opponents.
Yes.
What is it exactly, from your vantage point, that they have or have not done in terms of just being able to curb violent crime, in terms of being able to reel in the young people?
Well, first of all, they, help create the narrative of defund the police. And in creating that narrative, they were able to keep the police force around 3,000, 3,100. But they continued the budget for 4,500 officers. So over the past 4 or 5 years, what happened to the monies for those 1,400 FTEs? And how are you utilizing this? You're doing all this stuff in the darkness. And then when you look at the paid family leave, we were generating so much from the paid family leave that the council and the mayor had to reduce the rate. But what happened to the surplus of all this money that was being produced? And then finally, with the traffic cameras, the cameras are supposed to be funding Vision Zero. But there's been so much money made and so many more cameras added. So where are those dollars? And so now I look at these members, you were there. And you want to shout at the mayor, and I know you're running and what have you, but you have to take accountability. And then in terms of delivery, I look at Councilmember McDuffie, and he really pushes the baby bonds bill. You would think the baby bonds bill has been enacted and funded. It's not. You've been there for almost 13 years. You've been there at least 8 years as chairman pro tem. You have not been able to get that bill funded. So what makes me think that you are going to be able to deliver when you was the second person in charge? And what else can you physically touch? See, I can say I have gotten over 40 pieces of legislation enacted, and you don't have to take it from me. Just walk in the Home Depot, walk in the Giant, walk into Costco, walk into McKinley Tech, walk into the recreation centers, touch the minimum wage, touch the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program. That's delivery. And I it's hard for me to, really digest that the way the media has been approaching this entire race. They're approaching it on who utilized public financing. There's no poll. Where's the poll that says that these are the leading candidates? They can't be the leading candidates in terms of record. When I make the statement that I'm the most accomplished, the most trained, the most educated, and have delivered the most, they cannot engage in conversation with me on that subject matter. They can't. So they just sit there, but they get a pass. And so in terms of Janice Lewis George, she has gone on record saying she's going to raise taxes. Well, first of all, this congestion tax, you need folks to come in the city because that's the only tax they pay is our sales tax when they buy things. You don't need a tax to prevent people from coming in here. We basically, our economy is based on 25 to 35 million people coming to our city on an annual basis. We push tourism, the museums, the restaurants, the theaters. And so when you're doing all that, the umbrella has to be public safety, because I need public safety for my children to go to school. I need public safety for you to get to work every day. I need public safety for our neighborhoods, but I also need public safety for economic development, for tourism. I can't have a person going to the ball game and get carjacked. I can't have a person going to a restaurant getting shot. We have great neighborhoods. I mean, if you go over to Congress Heights, go to Go-Go Museum area, the arts district that's been created, Adams Morgan, Brooklyn, North Michigan Park. I can't have you there if you're not safe. And in particular, now the Navy Yard has become the focal point. We spend so much dollars and political capital on developing the Navy Yard. That Navy Yard must work. It must generate the revenue that's been projected. And you can't do that if people don't feel safe. Now, personally, I have an 8-year-old granddaughter and a 17-month-old granddaughter. We love going down to the Navy Yard and going to the little water park and, you know, the little cafe where the water spruits up and they play in it. But now, you know, I'm a little uncomfortable. Is something going to break out? Is something going to go down? And you can't have that type of fear. So that's why I think public safety is the key while we continue to build on what we have. I don't like this whole idea of we need to get rid of everything. No, we don't need to get rid of anything. We need to improve what we have. We don't have a money problem. We have a man.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you know, pardon me, what's your take on the perspective that the youth don't have enough enrichment activities? You know, we hear that time and time again from the council. I wanted to just get your perspective on that.
Well, I would say, let me take it from what they're saying. If that is true, then where's the legislation to open up the recreation centers in the evenings? Where is the legislation to make sure that DC residents get first priority on all the things we got going on? When I go around these recreational facilities, I see people from outside the city that have rented our facilities. I see those facilities opened up to us. You cannot freely go into these facilities in place. So that is an issue that's solvable if the council and the mayor get together and make it happen. You have the authority to do that. So once again, you know, I think the blame game is old. Where are the solutions, especially when they are within the scope of what you are there to do? And all it takes is 7 votes. And, you know, it takes 9 votes and you run the city. It doesn't matter what the mayor says. You can override her. And so that was one of the strengths that I brought to the table and the things that I was able to get done. It is talking to my colleagues, getting those votes lined up, or, you know, talking with the mayor. How are we going to get these votes? And then getting things done. So in what I'm seeing is that is not taking place. It's too much of finger pointing and it's too much posturing. And I think you were at the forum where I said, if all of a sudden, you know, I just start bleeding, I want you to put pressure on that cut, you know, get me taped up, and then, you know, you can get me to the doctor later, but
yeah,
take me right now. So if we need to have the curfew right now, while you introduce emergency legislation, and emergency legislation goes into effect right away, 90 days is happening. And then, you know, you send it up to Congress. So once again, if you believe that you need to expand the Marion-Barry Summer Youth Employment Program to start it earlier, to make it from June all the way to September, you can certainly do that. You want to open up the recreation facilities, you can certainly do that. If you want to have more, homework classes and more ways to reach out to the students, you can do that. And the key is having the will to do it and then building a consensus for it, as opposed to, this is my political position, and I know this is going to be this other person's political position, so we're going to keep bumping heads and get solved.
I appreciate that. Can you talk to me about your education platform? I know you said age 3 up to like graduation or just post grad. You know, especially now with the conversation around the pay equity fund, how does that work? You know, will the child care centers be a part of that? What's your vision around all that?
Okay, well, first and foremost, universal pre-K must work. But I believe that we need to look at it in segments. Our 3 and 4 year olds need to be trained to become kindergartners, to be able to take that seat. But as a 3 and 4 year old, we need to do our assessments. Let's assess the children's eyes. They can't read because they can't see. They never pay attention. Well, did you check their ears to make sure that they can hear you? All those little assessments need to take place. And then after you exhaust that checklist, then you may have to examine what's going on in the home. But it starts with a 3 and 4 year old. I need a person that's taking that seat as at 5 years old to now start preparing to get to the fourth grade. So I think the emphasis should be on the curriculum. For a kindergartner, what should a kindergartner master during the year of kindergarten? And then when you go to the first grade, they're elevated. What's our curriculum for the first grade? And did that get mastered? And then the second grade, because ultimately we know we're going to have that assessment to ascertain whether or not you can read independently upon entering the fourth grade, whether or not you can add, subtract, multiply, or divide upon entering the fourth grade. And if not, that's when the statistics come into play. More likely than not, you're going to make contact with the criminal justice system if you're not able to do that. There's going to be exceptions, but more likely than not. And so we need to make sure that when our kids get to the fourth grade, they're in a position to be introduced to decimals, to fractions, to algebra. You're no longer learning to read. You're now reading to regurgitate. What did you read? What did you learn? And so it all starts as a progression. It's a building. You're building. You're building. And so I think that is the key. And then from there, once our kids actually get into middle school, we have to make sure that they are moving forward, because that's when the competition starts with the streets. You find out you've been left behind, and then now you have, other folks grabbing you away. Hey, just come do this. Let's do this fast money. I need you to do this, do that.
Yeah.
And you go to school, you're left behind. And so for me, every high school graduate will have 4 options. Option number 1, you can go to UDC tuition free. Option number 2, if you go to one of these colleges or university, we pay you $15,000 to leave the city, which I don't agree with, forcing our kids out. I'm gonna sweeten the pie and give you more money to stay here, because I believe our young minds should be our next generation into the government, our next generation into the business. Where you go to school, graduate from college, you may wind up staying there. You fall in love, you get a job, and there's a lot of stuff that's attracting you. You've been there for 4 years, and we need those young minds here. The third option I'm providing, apprenticeships, a youth apprenticeship program. So you say, hey man, I'm not ready to go to school. My family needs some help. I need to work. So if you say you want to be an accountant, you can get an apprenticeship at the Office of Tax and Revenue. If you say you want to get into event planning, you can get an apprenticeship at the Convention Center with Events DC. You want to be into sports management, how sports management runs, you can get an apprenticeship. We're going to get you over at Audi Field, Nats Park, or the new stadium that's being built. You into the environment and science. I'm going to get you an apprenticeship over at the Department of the Environment. Yeah. Because as the mayor, I have oversight over those 90 agencies, and every one of them are going to have a youth apprenticeship program. Every one of them. And I'm going to be the one you're going to be held accountable to. And my record speaks for itself. If you go back to the Certified Business Enterprise Program, when Linda Kropp made me the chairperson on the Committee of Government Operations, I saw there was only one agency in compliance with the law, Office of Aging, the only one that dealt with CBEs. So basically, we're spending $0 with our own certified business enterprises when the law says 50% of your expendable budget must be spent with certified business enterprises. None of the agencies were following. I called them in every year. They had to appear before me. And the mayor tell you the story. Every year, and if you don't get your budget in order, I'm going to move to reduce your budget. Yeah. So it jumped. In that first 6 years, it went from $0 to $481 million. Then Bowser becomes mayor. And then I convinced her to, let's do the Green Book. So now the Green Book tells you the expendable budget and how much each agency must spend. So then I team up with Marion because Marion's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
We hold a rally. We force the inspector general to tell us or to confirm what we're saying, that the expendable budget is $1 billion. He confirms it. And he says, not only am I confirming this for y'all, they missed $1 billion in the current fiscal year we're in. So that elevated the program more. So now the expendable budget is up to $3 billion. So now the mayor announces, I'm going to spend $1.5 billion with the DC businesses because that's 50%.
Right.
And when I get in office, I'm going to get it to $2 billion because the spendable budget is going to be about $4 billion. But it's being hands-on approach and knowing what has to be done. So I did it with the CBE program, got to the point where I had 98% compliance rate because no one wants to get in front of that camera. You've been there for now 6 years and you're still out of compliance. You're not spending with CBEs. And so it's that type of knowledge, of institutional knowledge, not starting over, but improving what we have and then addressing the issues that, that are there.
So I wanted to ask you, I got two questions, two part. So like, do you see yourself at any time during your mayoralty trying to raise taxes? That's my first question. And my second question, as far as like a district government-wide audit, what does that look like? Just given your experience, how would you go about seeing agency to agency what's being spent, what's being misspent?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, no to raising taxes. Once again, we don't have a money problem. We have $22 billion at our disposal. 11.7 billion is locally generated. That means that comes from our citizens, and the difference comes from the federal government. So it's a management problem. Now, in terms of how do you put a check and find out where the dollars are, I will have a revenue alignment commission. So in the first column is going to be all the dollars and where they come from. Does it come from real property? Does it come from individual taxes? Does it come from sales taxes? Does it come from the paid family leave program? Does it come from the traffic cameras? Line it all up. This is our gross income. And then this comes from the federal government. Next column is going to be what is the intended purpose for those revenues. Find out the intended purpose. Now, what is the cost of the intended purpose? Mm-hmm. And then the next column, the surplus.
Gotcha.
Okay. And now with the surplus, I want to know where the surplus is going. And what are you using to fund with the surpluses, because it doesn't have its own funding source. So a lot of programs that we're running, it doesn't have a funding source. So now that's why we run into the problem, the $1 billion gap. Now, how this gap started, and I know that, now I'm definitely not in favor of Trump administration and the way he carries his business. But that doesn't mean I don't have the obligation to read what he puts out. So when he put out the big, beautiful bill, which is unified across the country, he goes around, he tells people, I'm not going to tax your overtime. I'm not going to tax your tips. If you bought a car, I'm going to let you deduct the interest payments. Mm-hmm. Seniors, I'm going to give you an extra $6,000 deduction. Businesses, I'm going to let you deduct accelerated depreciation and research and development. Now, of course, I realize that isn't as much as you're giving to your 1%ers, but it's still real dollars. It's $600 million. And to me, I'm going to look at, can that $600 million circulate in the DC economy? If I get that $600 million to the middle class, I know they're going to spend it in DC. If I get it, if I let the tip workers who are just ordinary people like you and I, these are the ones that are waiting on tables. Mm-hmm. These are the ones in the hospitality. They're the ones getting the tips. They're going to spend that money in the DC economy. The overtime, I already know overtime is from the police officers because you don't have enough of them. And so they have to work all this overtime. The firefighters, the daycare workers, all that's the overtime. And so they're the ones that's going to get those dollars. The seniors, they're going to get an additional $6,000 deduction. They're going to spend it in the DC economy. So all of a sudden, you got an additional $600 million circulating in our community. To me, it ain't got nothing to do with Trump. I'm looking at what he got and how I can make it work for us. Now, what the council did and what McDuffie admitted to in a closed forum with the unions, he said that he and Mendelson wrote the decoupling legislation, and Janice signed on to it.
Yeah.
And what in their version of the $600 million, they take the $600 million, they give $200 million to low-income families because they sweeten the pie for the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. But it takes them $400 million to do that. They keep $400 million.
Mm.
So you just took $400 million out of the economy. And on top of it, you did it in secret. You didn't put it out and have a public hearing so folks can come weigh in. So folks can say, yes, I'm okay with the $600 million not going to the middle class. I'm okay without my tips, aren't going to be deducted. I'm okay that my overtime is not going to be deducted. You didn't do that. You didn't explain that. But the real kicker was they thought that they would get it through Congress. And so when they sent it up there, kicked it back and said no. So now we're in a pickle, because we didn't have an alternative plan. Even if you want to go that route, what's the alternative plan in case it gets kicked back? Now you got caught with your pants down.
Yeah.
You don't have an alternative plan. And now, not only you don't have an alternative plan, the Attorney General, which I think has been doing a great job for the city. Like I thought that he was going to run for mayor. I think he would have been a hard person to beat if he ran for mayor because he takes on the White House. He ain't afraid.
Yeah.
But he comes in and he says, well, no, Congress is wrong. We sent the law up on a Monday and the clock was supposed to run and they missed the deadline by 1 day. So we don't have to follow. Congress is saying, no, you sent it up on Monday. The clock starts running on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. So we're going to go to this court system and talk about 1 day. And Congress, that has the ultimate authority, along with the president over the District of Columbia, we think we're going to prevail on that 1 day argument. That's what it all boils down to. And if you look at it, the CFO he's not buying the government's argument. That's the reason why he won't release the $180 million.
Exactly.
And so that's the issue. And although it's a $1 billion gap, basically what people don't understand is over a 4-year period.
Right.
So in my case, I'm thinking, what I would give the $600 million, plus I would provide the $200 million to the low-income families, $800 million tax package for the citizens of the District of Columbia. Then your question should be, well, Orange, how are you going to pay for that? Simple. We have 4 reserves, and we can only use 1 reserve, the contingency reserve.
Right.
But we don't need all of it. We only need a small portion, and we just need to balance this year. And we balance this year. We use that. We do an audit and sweep all the surpluses, and we balance the budget. But now in my mind, I know I got $800 million that's going to circulate in the economy for this fiscal year. So when this fiscal year is over, there's going to be money because all this money is circulating in the District of Columbia. And then at the same time that's circulating, I got my Revenue Alignment Commission to find the surpluses.
Yeah.
And then these programs like I don't know how you feel about these programs, but the Violence Interrupter Program, the ONSEE program, we got to see where those programs work, because if they don't work, they need to be dismissed, because those are dollars that we're spending. So a lot of these programs that don't have their own source. So that's from a accounting tax background. And the reason why I know I'm in this space and I know that I'm correct, because when I first graduated from Howard Law School in 1983, and I went to work for Arthur Anderson Company, the #1 accounting firm in the world. Well, Arthur Anderson had the contract to audit DC government. And I was assigned to that contract, and my job was to keep track of everybody's time on on that audit. So that's what really got me into looking into it. What got me to really start running for office is I went in and Janetta Barris, she was a young reporter, and I don't know if you know Bill Reed. They ran the Capitol Spotlight, all them. I'm running up in there. They like this little young accountant dude, you know, CPA, LLM, all this crap. He's telling us there's going to be a deficit. So I'm like, Paul Review. I said, man, it's a deficit. I'm telling you, I was there. I got to look at those numbers. I know how they cook those numbers. A deficit is coming.
Yeah.
You know, they and I think Bill wrote a little bit. He says, yeah, this guy Orange says it's going to be a $300 million deficit. Well, 1999, 1988, $518 million deficit. And that's what got me through the door because I had been running. But, you know, I'm young, brash. You know, John Wilson was the man.
Right.
Listening to me, you know. Yeah. But when that stuff happened, all of a sudden, all the professionals, along with the bean counter Williams, we get in the office, and you know that's how we got ourselves out of that. So that's why I know that I'm ingrained. But I will say that at this point in time, we can't rest on our laurels because that plan, if you were to look it up, Economic Resurgence of Washington, D.C., Citizens Plan for Prosperity, it has been executed. And so we can't use that plan. So now, where do we find ourselves?
Right.
We find ourselves in an environment where we've gone through COVID. COVID showed the accounting firms, the legal firms, all these firms that they don't need to have these big office buildings. They don't have to pay all those janitors and have all that. I can give you a laptop and keep you at home and keep track of you, and you can give me the product that I need.
Yeah.
I'm saving money. So that starts to kill the economy.
Then the plan as far as, you know, pivoting to that economy, like as mayor, you know, how would you generate revenue in that type of environment?
Right. Excellent question. This is the last part, and I'll jump to that. So that's the office building.
Yeah.
And then what also complicates the problem is the Trump administration because they're taking away all the federal jobs. So that complicates the problem too. So we got private sector complications and public sector complications. That's killing our downtown economy. Now to your question. Well, how do you solve that, Mr. Orange? Well, we look there and we see what are our strengths. Our strengths are tourism. Our strengths lies in museums, theaters, restaurants, and being the seat of government. So we pivot, in my view, we pivot to family entertainment. This becomes a family destination location because we're building on our foundation. That's why I'm upset that Prince George's County is getting the Sphere, you know, the Sphere that's from Vegas. That Sphere needs to be on New York Avenue as you coming down Route 50. It needs to be right there, New York and Bladensburg. You had that Sphere right there.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's off the chain, man.
I can see that.
And then right across the street, you have the National Arboretum. Then you already have you about to build a new city really with the stadium.
Yeah.
You know, and so you got the Sphere, you got all that attraction. And then, you know, the night view watching the games, you got the Sphere doing this thing, you got the stadium doing this thing. Oh man, I got to, you know how this stuff goes. In fact, I got to be in DC.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's happening. And the type of jobs that stuff will create, those are jobs that DC residents can have. Those are jobs that our young people, we get them in the entry level, you know, you can have those jobs. And I think that is the key for us. Now, you know, everybody talks about Langston. I'm definitely for Langston Golf Course. Definitely understand it's a historic site from 1939. It was named after John Mercer Langston, who was one of the first African-American politicians in the Commonwealth of Virginia, also the first dean of Howard Law School, which I'm a graduate of. So anything that happens at Langston must maintain that heritage and that history. Anything.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I don't have a problem approaching Trump. Like, look, man, we got 3 golf courses. You can do what you want at East Potomac. You can do what you want at Rock Creek. But look at this plan. Check this out. We can build a state-of-the-art golf clubhouse, move it back up towards the National Arboretum. And now that clubhouse is looking over the golf course all the way into where the new stadium is going to be built.
Yeah.
You want a ballroom? I'm putting a ballroom right there on Langston. I'm generating revenue. And the way the other states do it, you're worried about the cost to play there. When you go to other states and play, there's a resident cost and there's a non-resident cost.
Yeah.
So that's how we, make sure that that folks can still afford to play. But also, you got to look at what they did in Atlanta. They actually provided pathways for the youth into golf by way of golf management, landscaping, events planning. And so, you do all that to make it a training ground while you're preserving the history, and you can do all that. But to me, it's all about, where's the vision?
Yeah.
What are you looking at? And so, the progressives will say, oh, no, you're spending all the money doing that. No, if I'm a pure progressive, I'm fighting you on the revenue that's being generated. Go ahead and build it. Tell me how much you're gonna make. Yeah. So they did the same thing about the Audi Field and Nats Park.
You're right.
But that area generates so much revenue, and the progressives want to spend it. So why are you stopping the dollars that you need to give you the money for you to fight for the revenue for housing, for disability services, for mental health services, for providing services to the homeless, for upgrading our educational system? Your policies did not get us from a $518 million deficit to the $22 billion government. You got to look at what policies got us here.
Yeah.
Those dollars that you're arguing about. So, once again, it's just in that crystal ball, and we need to pivot. We have it. And then in terms of all these vacant buildings, you generating this revenue. Well, you got vacant buildings. How come you can't have a nice establishment for the homeless? The building is vacant. Yeah, I rather put my money in that particular homeless facility. One, for me, I want to know who the homeless are. I want to know who you are. And so, I don't know if you saw my little video. I went down to Martin Luther King Library, and I did a video down there. All the homeless, they're sleeping.
I saw that actually. I saw that the next day.
That. Yeah. And so I'm coming to you. I ain't waiting for you to come to me. I'm coming to you with a mobile shower bus. Yeah. And I'm gonna let you come take a shot. But I'm finding out who you are. I'm gonna give you the personal hygiene products for the women. But I'm finding out who you are. Ma'am, what can I do to assist your day? What do you need?
Yeah.
And I think that's the way we become a more engaged government, a more accommodating government. And that's what I bring to the table. And I bring the institutional knowledge. When I hear these folks talk about, we don't have statehood. You got to give Eleanor Holmes credit. You got to give her the credit. She brought it to the 1-inch line, and the 2 Democrats let us down. The last time we got that close was when Jimmy Carter was president. It's Democrats that, Republicans ain't gonna never be for us, but we had a 50-50 tie. Kamala Harris getting ready to break the tie. Biden go sign the legislation. We a state. But somebody got the mention, and what's her name? I forget her name, Serena or something like that. Cinema from Arizona.
Right.
It's those 2.
Kirsten, yeah.
Yeah. So we got to watch our own house, because these people talk good rhetoric, but a lot of these Democratic Southern senators, they ain't for DC being a state. And we got to know who they are.
I wanted to talk with you. And I actually have to wrap up for another interview, but I wanted to talk with you about your housing policy. If you wouldn't mind just delving into that, because you did talk about the homelessness. What is your vision for increasing or for lowering the cost of housing in DC?
Okay, well, my vision right away, without raising taxes, I'm getting $100 million from the Housing Production Trust Fund every year. So I'm starting off, I'm building 1,000 units, 600 square feet, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room. And that's going to be for our first responders. That's going to be for seniors. And that's going to be for youth graduating from college. Get that done in the first year. And I'm letting the DC Certified Business Enterprises build it. So once again, those dollars are circulating in the district. We get that done in year one. I'm pushing for an increase in the Housing Production Trust Fund. In the following year, we're going to keep building, but they're affordable. It's for those folks that have the minimum wage. The minimum wage, I was able to ascertain before that the minimum wage at that point in time would allow one to have a $50,000 tiny houses, they called it at that time. And now, a tiny house is 400 square feet. I'm talking 600 square feet. And I think that's how we uplift the folks. So our young people will have education free at UDC. They will have jobs, entry-level jobs that afford them to get one of those units. And that's how we start building ourselves up. People have to be able to feel and touch the housing. Affordable housing isn't 80% of the AMI, 70% of the AMI. We have to get to provide housing for our workforce and for our young people. So that is essentially my policy to make sure that happens, while at the same time giving incentives to the developers to do what they do, because we do need those units, those people that can afford them, because we need them to pay the real property taxes. So it's a balancing act.
Appreciate that. Before I let you go, I wanted to see if there was, I'm very interested in this, and I've actually tried to ask the other candidates this. How would you assemble your administration? And like, to what degree would you consider bringing on one or two of your opponents into your administration? Like, what are you looking for as far as, teammates, teammates?
Good question. Well, I see a couple people that's in this race that I definitely would bring on, to work with me. In particular, I think Rennie brings a lot to the table, and I would talk with good weather. Sometimes for me he's on, sometimes he's off, sometimes I don't know where he's coming from. But I would assess all the candidates and see what their strengths are, and see where they can help. I'm somewhat of a student of history. I know when Lincoln got in office, he had a team of rivalries. His cabinet was rivalries.
Yeah.
And so I'm open, because for me, I'm telling you, I'm a hands-on mayor, so I'm going to hold you accountable. There's going to be measurable accountability. My chancellor, I'm not paying a chancellor $300,000-$400,000 in a year, and you don't have measurable outcomes. Outcomes got 85% of our kids got to be graduating from high school. 85% of our young people have to be able to read independently, add, subtract, multiply, and divide upon entering the 4th grade. Apprenticeships in the schools. What does your curriculum consist of? Because that curriculum is going to tell me what it is ultimately we're trying to produce. And I don't think it's been that type of accountability that's been put in place. So for me, it's hands-on accountability and competence. So if you can get the job done, but I can assure you, my cabinet meetings are going to be lively, because I've been around long enough. I have the institutional knowledge to know what should be taking place, and I'm going to hold you accountable.
You definitely answered 2 or 3 more questions I had with that one, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Just wanted to thank you for your time this afternoon, and definitely got a lot. As far as the timeline, let me stop the recording here.